Hi guys, so I've had the XM2we from Endgame Gear for 3 weeks now and I can safely say that it is an exceptional mouse, especially for the price. Let's start with one of my favorite things about this mouse, the coating. It is insanely good. Like I knew from others that Endgame Gear coatings are awesome, but I seriously didn't expect this. It is like rubbery but still chalky. It gets creepier as my hand gets wettier, and just look at this. There's no way you could pry this mouse from my hand, and that is not an invitation to try to do that, by the way. It truly makes this mouse a pleasure to use. There is one minor issue though. This black one is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, so you might need to clean it fairly often. I'm not sure if the white one has the same issue though. In a true Endgame Gear fashion, the mouse is built rock solid. There is absolutely no creaking whatsoever when I squeeze it from the sides. There is just the tiniest amount of sideways wobble on the main buttons, and the pre and post travel is also minimal. The amount of post travel depends where you click the button, and it is more apparent if you click it on the front. The switches are Kale Go optical switches, and man oh man, they feel good. They are a little bit on the heavier side and heavier than the optical Razor uses, but I myself like a heavier click feeling. One awesome thing about optical switches is that they don't get double clicking issues like the traditional mechanical switches, so potentially you could use this mouse for years and years without needing a switch upgrade. The main mouse buttons are very flat shaped and extend all the way to the sides, and there are no ring finger ledges as on the Death Adder V3 for example, which I usually like to have on a mouse, but the lack of those doesn't really bother me here since the buttons are slightly beveled on the edges. The scroll wheel is for my hand a tad bit too forward, and I have to take a more relaxed claw than I usually do to reach it. I think that the scroll wheel is in the perfect position for hand sizes over 18 centimeters, but for my 17.5 centimeter hands it is just a tiny bit too forward. I don't have problems using it in games, but I prefer it to be just a tiny bit more towards the hump. It is using the TTC Silver encoder with KLGM 2.0 button for the middle click, and together they feel really premium and the scroll wheel feels consistent on up and down scrolls. Side buttons are a nice continuation from the shell and have a solid gap between them, so you can better feel which button you are pressing. And the backside button is fairly large and sensitive, so sometimes I accidentally hit it mid-fight in Apex, and that can cause some issues. I have it bound to melee, so there is no better feeling than responding to gunfire with fisting the air. I can solve that by adjusting my thumb position a bit, so it is a minor issue. Otherwise, the side buttons are really nice and feature the same KLGM 2.0 switches than on the scroll wheel, which feel really crispy and have no annoying post or pre-travel. Here is a quick sound test of all the buttons. Because the optical switches generally use more energy, the mouse is using a fairly large 410 mAh battery. The battery should provide you around 1 week of gameplay promised by Endgame Gear, and I don't really remember how many times I've charged this mouse during these 3 weeks, but probably once a week. Despite the battery being large, the mouse is still only 63 grams and the weight balance is really centered. Then let's talk about the sensor performance. It is rocking the Pixar 3370 sensor, which caused some ruckus in the beginning of this year. XM2we was hugely criticized for using this oldish sensor on their long-awaited wireless release, mainly because of the price of the mouse, but also because people associated the sensor with poor performance and the lack of motion sync, the new buzzword associated with gaming mice. Motion sync is actually not a feature that is necessary on an esports capable mouse and will cause additional motion delay, usually when poorly implemented. I was generally unhappy with what I could say about sensor performances in my previous reviews, so I figured out how to do some basic tests about them. I followed the tech power-ups testing instructions found somewhere in the depths of r/mouse review and got the following results. The sensor performance is actually really good on the XM2we, and I could get really consistent results on the motion delay that were just under 1 millisecond. I get consistently better results than the other 3370 sensor mice I tested, like the MZ1 from Xtrify. It was just a tiny bit behind the GPX, but the difference was really marginal, so it's kinda hard to tell. I also checked the polling rate stability and the tracking smoothness on 1000 Hz, and everything seems to be okay here. And in-game performances feel really good as well. There were no hiccups or spinouts whatsoever, and together with the shape it just feels phenomenal in hand. And speaking of the shape of the mouse is the tried and true claw shape from Endgame Gear, which has recently been copied and slightly varied by a lot of companies. Lately, Lamzu for example, it has a large hump at the back, and for my hand size it fits really well, especially on the palm area. No kidding, I can actually lift the mouse with just my palm. Like this. This means that the grip is really locked in and downward adjustments can be lacking with claw grip, but that is the trade-off usually with these back hump mice. There are these downward sloping curves on either side that provide really good contact points for your pinky, ring finger and thumb, and allow your hands to grip more loosely around the mouse while still maintaining the ability to lift the mouse when you do quick readjustments. The scales of this mouse are fairly large and made from pure PTFE with good rounded edges. They feel smooth on all my mouse pads and you don't need to replace them for a while. So for just 80 euros or $80 you get a really solid product that will no doubt last you a long time in use. The optical switches feel great and will not develop any double clicking issues in the future. The build quality is really solid. The sensor performance is really solid. So this is a solid mouse. This is a mouse that I can safely recommend if it suits your hand size and grip style. I hope this video helps you in any way, and if you found it helpful, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Those two minor things help out my channel a lot. So thanks for watching and bye bye.